Oh, 1, 2, 3.
You're very welcome along to the Brian and Kieran Warfield podcast, the ramblings of two Irish balladeers, featuring Brian Warfield of the Fierce and Mighty Wolf Tones and his son Kieran, that's me, of the band Catalpa, and also of the Bandwagon Bus, Dublin's only musical ballad tour on wheels. So sit back, relax, grab a tea, coffee, beer or wine or whatever takes your fancy as we go rambling through life's misty foggy dew, through stories, songs, history, politics, life on the road and just a general bit of crack.
Of me downfall, I walked out the door, and I go down to Carrick on shore. Going into Kilkenny, 'twas late in the night. As I went through that city, I saw the gas light with me fall the little and there in this back street there was this gas lamp, and under it sat the chap called a tramp. He asked me for a penny, and to him I did say, could you show me a place where I could stay? With me Paul the little He directed me down to Sweet Lover's Lane, to a place called the Refuge, I think that's the name. Stepped inside the door, put me back to the wall. 'Twas then I found out 'twas a cobbler's hall. With me Paul the little The old man in the corner, and he mending some rows, with his hammer and chisel going round like a ghost. The old woman inside, and to me she did say, if you give me a shilling, sir, here you can stay. With me Paul the little She brought me upstairs and she put out the light, and in less than 5 minutes I had to show fight. For the bugs and the flies they collected to march, and over me belly they formed an arch. And one big renader gave me such a nip, I was very near losing the use of me hip. With me fall the little I sat up in the bed and the man did fair play. Sure, if I had me stick, I could fight me away. Jumped out through the window and gathered some stones. Sure, if I had sore sides, I gave them broken bones. With me fall the little How come all you fair maidens, wherever you be, wherever you travel, by land or by sea, if you're going to Kilkenny and intending to stay, beware of the Louse house in Sweet Lover's Lane. With me fall the little
The Louse House in Kilkenny, number 5 track off the Foggy Dew album, recorded in 1965 on Fontana label by the Wolf Tones.
Takes me back in time, no doubt about it, because yeah, that's one of the first songs. We had a kind of gang that we sang together with, and Noel Nagle's brother-in-law, Tony Butler. He was only going out with his sister at the time, and he had a good collection of songs. Everybody had a little collection, and the song they sang, and that was one of his. And we got it often because we often sang together as a group. And Tony went his own way. He was working in Ireland, and I think he was making more money in Ireland than going out singing music. But anyhow, we got the song from him, and we put it on our first LP. But we have been singing around since about 1963, and we probably singing that song since then. So it was obvious when we went to record that it was one of the songs we put on.
Again, it's one of the songs that the Dubliners will be more famous for, rather than the Wolf Tones, even though you recorded it first. And the first recording I could find of it was from 1952, and it was recorded on a BBC program.
Really, yeah. Well, I guess it's around a lot longer than that, because like you heard, the Louse house or the lodging houses that they had around the country and around England and Scotland and everywhere, had these tales of big bugs that would bite you. And, they had at one stage, my Uncle Tom used to tell me about having this place that what they did was you had to sleep standing up. So everybody slept in a row standing up, and you had a kind of a harness that went around you to keep you. You could lean on the harness thing, and that's the way everyone went to sleep on the night. So there could be like 20 or 30 people in the room.
Jesus. Sounds like fun.
And in the morning, if you didn't wake up, they cut the rope and you all fell down.
Well, I've stayed in a few guest houses now that you could say call Louse houses.
Yeah,
you must have stayed in a few on your travels around the road.
Oh, tell me about it. Like another song, I think that tells about the story of big bugs eating away the poor people, and that was the night we went to Rozio. And that was a kind of a Scottish version of the Louse house in Kilkenny, you might say. But they had big, huge bugs there that were as big as dogs. So there was always a bit of an exaggeration. But, the Irish, as a people travelling around for harvest time and for planting time across Scotland and England, and they went to plant the harvest and then went back again to reap the harvest. So they stayed in some awful places, and because it was cheap, they didn't have the money to go anywhere else. But yeah, we did a few queer ones ourselves, because when we went first on tour, the dance halls in England, the dance hall put you up in a place wherever it be. It's normally a guest house, but they put you into billets. We used to call them billets. I remember one night we were staying in this place. There must have been about 10, 12 beds in the room. And I guess there was a show band staying there. We were staying there. We were a lot of 4 beds anyhow. And, there was all kinds of shenanigans going on in the room. There was I won't tell it all, but I mean it was just amazing.
Tell us.
Well, they might have had little girlfriend guests and all that kind of thing going on, but it was just, that's the way it was. If you went on tour, you weren't put up in a luxury hotel, that's for sure. It was a guest house. It was normally a billet. It was normally a couple of bands staying in the one place. And, you made the most of it. And you were probably called at about 8 o'clock in the morning so as to get the beds ready for the next shift. But that's what we went through. And they wouldn't have been the most hygienic places in the world.
Yeah, I think when I went on my first tour of the east coast of America, we stayed above this pub in Highland Mills in New York, upstate New York, for a good few nights, and I wouldn't say it definitely wasn't the Ritz.
It wasn't 5-star.
No, so when we moved up to Syracuse and out to Pennsylvania, we were delighted because we had booked hotel rooms for that, so just to have a bit of luxury. But it was grand. It suited because we weren't earning a lot of money when we were over there, so you just have to cut your budget to it, like.
Yeah, well, you don't want to go on tour and then spend all your money in hotels.
No,
you have to bring back something to keep the home fires burning. But yeah, we stayed in. When we played the Old Shieling in New York, the Old Shieling in New York it was an old building, and I had the subway, the subway running past it. It used to go through our brain, but the conditions there were terrible, and we made the best. We clean up, go and get the sheets washed, and we all had a room each. But the hygiene of the bedclothes and everything else were great. So as soon as we got there, we went to the laundry and we washed everything and cleaned the place down and made the most of it. But it was free.
Yeah, you get more than fleas off it.
You go in a cripple and you come out walking.
Well, It'll probably give you good protection against COVID if you.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. An injection from some kind of a bug.
So this week is the 40th anniversary of the hunger strike. It's the start of the first day of Bobby Sands going on hunger strike. And you'd remember that time more than me, Dad. I was, 1981, I was 12.
Yeah. Well, just to go back on the hunger strike idea, the hunger strike goes back to pre-Christian times, and it was used to protest against somebody that had done some kind of preconceived injustice to you. And it was the age of hospitality, and hospitality in Ireland was part of the Irish system. And for someone to starve themselves outside your door or your castle was a terrible embarrassment to the owner of the house, because having starved outside the house in a place in a country where the culture was to give hospitality to all was not a good thing. It embarrassed the family and embarrassed everybody. So it was used to get back on some kind of injustice. It could be money owed, it could be, something about cattle or sheep or whatever. But that's the way it was. And then it moved on, in later days. It was embedded in, the Irish system. And, in the 1990s and the 1920s, about all the hunger strikes there. The Mayor of Cork, Terence McSweeney, in Brixton Prison. We had Thomas Ashe, of course, and he was in Mountjoy Prison. And normally what they did when people went on hunger strike, they didn't want them to die, and so they force-fed them. And by force-feeding them, it was worse, because it was like a torture, and they died during that process, maybe of heart attacks, of other things. And, so the hunger strike is kind of like history repeats itself in Ireland. Every generation went through all those things. And, when it came up to our time in 1980s, the hunger strike idea was still in the Irish ideas and in the Republican ideas. And so I think the first hunger strike that went on, there was 9 people who went on that hunger strike. It lasted 94 days. And what happened was that they thought that the British had conceded to their demands. But as we know, they neglected to carry through on it and reneged on the whole deal. And they brought them in clothes that looked like civilian clothes, but they weren't their own. Everyone had to wear the same civilian clothes. So that was out the wall. That wasn't what it's all about. Yeah. It was about political status. So, that followed on. And, right through the years, hunger strike idea, there was over 10,000 people went on hunger strike throughout the ages. Wow. And that'll tell you how important it was in protesting against injustice. But to come up to our present day hunger strike, which is the second one that went on, and that started off with Bobby Sands, and it went on for some time, and I was playing around Ireland, and the hunger strike was just a terrible thing. It seemed every month as somebody was dying, and nobody was caring, and nobody was crying, stop, what's this all about? Thatcher at the time, of course, had no sympathy for hunger strikers. They were terrorists in her eyes. And so it was when the 5th hunger striker died, I was in bed just after the gig. I don't know where I was the night before, but I'm listening to the news, the radio beside the bed, and it gives the news that the 5th hunger striker had died. Joe McDonnell was his name. And I kind of got mad, and I said, nobody's caring, this is terrible. And I said, I got to write a song to try and stop this. So I grabbed the guitar, got out of bed, grabbed the guitar, walked around the room like a maniac, walking around and around. Got the idea for the song, sang it, and by midday that day, I had the song written. And I always feel that, Grady MacDonald said to me at one stage, he said, how did you know so much about Joe? And I said, I didn't. But I certainly felt that he was there beside me, writing it and giving me hints on his life. And it's just a kind of a psychic experience that I had that, everything came out in that way. And, by 12 o'clock that day, this whole song was written. And, the words that I think they're probably the mean the most is, that you dare to call me a terrorist while you look down your gun when I think of all the deeds that you had done. So it's pushing it back. They were labelling our people, our great people in Ireland, as terrorists. And while they had done more terrorist acts in our country than anybody else. So I felt to push it back on them, saying, you dare to call me a terrorist while you look down your gun, when I think of all the deeds that you have done. You had plundered many nations, divided many lands. You had terrorised their peoples. You ruled with an Ireland hand. So we know all that, and that was across the empire, India, and everywhere else. Mahatma Gandhi was another person who took up the hunger strike idea, and many of the people in India took it up. So they followed Ireland's example and how they went about it. It was a peaceful way of protesting and a very effective way.
Mm. And do you think Thatcher, because she was a woman in a man's world, do you think that's one of the reasons why she tried to be hard and, not just in the hunger strikes, but in the miners' strike in the UK? Do you think because she was a woman in the political world, there wasn't many women at that time in politics as such, and do you think that's why she was a complete bitch, or just
that to my mind, that was the nature of the woman, and that's why she rose through the ranks. And she was an intransigent kind of person, and no give or no. She had no sympathy for anybody. Never mind, the people, the working class people in England had the same problem with her as we had in Ireland, and she had this dictatorial kind of attitude, and nobody dare say boo to her, and if you did, you took the wrath of her mouth or a handbag, wherever came first. You get a belt over the head with the handbag. But yeah, I think because she was a woman in a man's world, she might have felt that she had to be
ruthless.
Yeah. But that doesn't excuse.
I'm not excusing it, but I seen a documentary about her, and I think at the end when she was being interviewed, I think she had regrets. Now maybe just when you're coming near the deathbed, you have plenty of regrets, but I'm not too sure whether she was regretting the hunger strike, but other things. I felt that she was almost like looking for contrition on it,
Well, that's possible, yeah, because she would have needed a little hand, and like as it said in the poem one time, that if you're not Irish going up to heaven, you have a problem. Because certainly, the hunger strikers would have met her up there and kicked her around the place, somewhere down below.
Yeah. As I say in my new song, Thatcher and the devil now share the same cell.
There you go, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we'd other people like Michael Gaughan and Frank Stagg, and who gave their lives in hunger strike, and there's so many people across the ages. Two men, Danny Barry, Andrew O'Sullivan. They died during the Second World War, when De Valera imprisoned many of the Republican cohort of people. So, it continued on through the ages, and it's just that way in Ireland, as I said, goes back to pre-Christian times. If you wanted to protest peacefully and embarrass the person who caused you an injustice, that was the way to get back at them.
There were, I remember being a 12-year-old, that I remember all the black flags being out. So there was a support for the hunger strike down south. Maybe not politically wise, but definitely the will of the people were behind a lot of the hunger strikers. And that, I think, showed up in, wasn't it, the British Embassy was burnt out in...
That's after Bloody Sunday.
Was that after Bloody Sunday?
That was after Bloody Sunday, yeah. No, you had indeed, the hunger strikes when it happened, the hunger strikes, Bobby Sands and everybody else. You had the problem that the Irish people, I think, were very sympathetic towards it. I think it changed everything for the Irish people because, while Bobby Sands became an MP, Kieran Doherty got into the Dáil. Agnew got into the Dáil. So there was a great sympathy for the hunger strike in Ireland. So they voted 3 people into power because of it. So I think, in a way, that the Irish people were very, very sympathetic. It's in the psychic of the Irish people about the hunger strike, and people who do this. It's right, goes back to centuries. So it means something to Irish people.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they took it up, and they wanted to redress the situation and support them.
Yeah, and the 5 demands were quite simple demands.
Oh, yes.
I have them here. So the first one was the right not to wear a prison uniform, which you had already said. The second one was the right not to do prison work. The third one was the right of free association with other prisoners. The fourth one, the right to organise their own educational and recreational facilities. And the fifth one was the right to 1 visit, 1 letter and 1 parcel per week. So not really like they were asking for TVs or PlayStations or anything like that. They were quite simple and probably human right demands in terms of how they felt, and the special category status. And I think that's why Bobby picked the 1st of March, because that's when Britain were taking away the special category status.
Yeah, well, look, they were brave men to go through that. To go through with the hunger strike. You had to question yourself, would you do it? It's a difficult thing to do, to starve yourself in protest.
Well, you really have to believe in what you're doing to be able to put yourself through that, and to know that you're going to do it to the end, that basically your last days on earth are going to be without food or water.
Yeah, terrible. And they go through terrible suffering, and we don't understand that, but God help them and God bless them in the same way that they did make a statement. They had the courage to go ahead with what they said they would do, and I think they'll be forever remembered.
Yeah, it must have been very hard on the families, because they had the choice to take them off of the hunger.
Yeah, that has to be a terrible ordeal for the family. They have the power to do it, to stop it, and if they do, they know that their son would be very annoyed over it. So it was a difficult decision for them. How could you let your son die, and then if you don't let him die, he'd be angry at you for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So it's just a tough time for everybody.
Yeah. Have you ever met any of the hunger strikers that were on that hunger strike, but then when it was
the first one? I did, yeah. I think I met Brendan Hughes and who else? I can't remember now. But I did meet some of the people that were on it, and they were going to the death too. There was no doubt about it. But they were conned at the end of the day, and
I remember reading about that.
Yeah, they were conned, and it was sad that they gave in and were conned out of the effort that they had put into it, and
But it made them more determined for the second one.
The second one, yeah.
That they weren't until they had everything in writing and done properly.
Well, there were 7 prisoners went on the first one in 1980, And coming up to that Christmas, I remember they didn't want people to die over the Christmas period, and so they made this agreement, and it appeared to be what they wanted. And I think the pressure was on to stop people dying over the Christmas period.
Yeah.
And so they conned them the best way they could, and they did. And they reneged on what they promised them. So, just the second hunger strike then had to go ahead because they weren't going to accept the conditions that were given to them.
Yeah.
The protests were going on, since 1976. The blanket protest, as it was known, and that was for the same aims, which was political status, and the dirty protests and everything else like that. I remember the parades, and when we played concerts around the country, there was always like the blanket protest there, and people supporting the blanket men, and that was indeed. And I met some of them lads since then,
yeah.
And they've often come up after the gig and said, I think we had a photograph of the blanket men up on the screen. And this guy came up and said, "That's me."
Yeah.
Up there, the thing, and it's nice to make that connection with the people who lived that ordeal and were living people of that historic time.
Yeah, it was a living hell, really. Especially when they went on the No Wash Dirty protest after that. When they went into that, that was like to live like that with blankets, and they broke up their bed, and they did everything to make their life as much a hell to get them to stop.
Yeah. Well, brave men indeed.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
I know.
I'm going to a gig somewhere.
Well, if you've got nothing, I've got this. I don't know whether you've ever read this. This is Bobby Sands' poem called "The Crimes of Castlereagh."
Oh no, yeah. Read that. That'd be nice.
Unfortunately, I can't read it all because it's about 130 something verses long.
Oh well, don't read it.
But it gives you a little insight into Bobby's. It's his time in Castlereagh when he was getting interrogated, and then it moves on to Long Kesh.
Yeah.
But it's beautifully written, and if you ever have the time, I'll leave this with you.
He was a great writer. I mean, great ideas. He's almost a Padraig Pearse type example from the 1980s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just
like some of his songs are still stand the test of time. I still do Macklehatton. I still do Back Home in Derry, which was one of the first Irish songs that I learned to sing.
Yeah.
And even though he used the music of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, it's still a great song. Yeah. But his poetry and all is just.
He's a poet.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Yeah, definitely.
And that's why when I wrote the song Bobby, now there's been loads of songs written about Bobby, but I always imagined what it would have been like to sit down and write a song with him. So the only way I could do that was I took two verses from The Crimes of Castlereagh, and which became the chorus more or less, but I had to change a few words so it would fit in with the music. But the first verse of his poem was, "I scratched my name, but not for fame, upon the whitened wall. Bobby Sands was here, I wrote with fear, an awful shaky scrawl. I wrote it low, where eyes don't go, 'twas but to testify that I was sane and not to blame, should here I come to die."
Lovely verse, isn't it?
But the whole thing, there's verses and verses of it. You can see there yourself.
Yeah.
It's what I have. Many 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 A4 sheets, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 verses.
Oh my God! Yeah.
So 6 12s. What's that?
Well, his ideas, it shows that they were intelligent, deep thinking individuals, and who had brave ideas, and they followed through with them, and just remarkable men.
Yeah. Like, here's another verse just describing I stewed like a rat in porter fat, fermenting drunk with fear. When would they come, would be the one, the time was drawing near. I worried sick and scurried quick, like a blind man in a storm. I had no course but followed force of terror's blasting horn.
Oh my God. So poignant, isn't it?
Yeah, some great
it's very descriptive.
yeah. So if anyone's at the time, you can pretty much download it or have a look at it on the internet. Just type in The Crimes of Castlereagh, and it almost comes out as it's like a play of his time in Castlereagh, the Diplock Court afterwards, and then into incarceration in Longkesh.
So it goes from there up to the end, is it?
Well, not up to the hunger strike. I don't think. No, just
his time
intern or
in the maze.
Yeah.
See the way the British, they change the names of places like all the time to stop, the bad image of it.
Yeah.
I remember, first of all it was Longkesh.
Yeah.
then it became. What did it become? The maze,
The
was
maze,
it? Yeah.
But that's just from the area.
And then the H blocks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, people wonder, is that the same place where the torture took place? No, that's the, you know what I mean? They keep changing the names.
Yeah.
Like the way the Queens of England had to change, or the King of England had to change from Battenberger to the Windsors. Get rid of that German name. It didn't change the people.
So the last verse of it is actually where he goes, "Nor do we bend to black-clad men when torture screams is shrill, they who slight God's given right of each to his free will. So bend the back upon the rack of the H-block torture mill."
Oh dear, yeah.
So, yeah, I'll leave that here with you, Dad. You can have a read.
Yeah, that's very interesting indeed, yeah.
You'll enjoy it, I promise you that. So, I guess what we'll do is, at the end of this show, because we started with the Louse House in Kilkenny, is finish out with Joe McDonald, just as a poignant reminder of the 1981 H-blocks.
Yeah. Which, as you say, 40 years.
Yeah.
How 40 years go so fast, don't they?
Yeah.
No, really.
But still remembered fondly. Like, I was looking at Facebook last night, and the amount of now I did a live show, just dedication to it, which I just did all music from different people that had been written over the years with regards to the H-block, the men in the H-block or the hunger strike, and the amount of songs that are out there. Like, I thought I'd be only on for about an hour. I was on for nearly 2 hours. Like,
oh my God.
And so some great songs, like there was a couple of songs by Jerry Glacken, a song by Claymore, which I'd never heard, a lovely song about Raymond McCreesh. I think that might have been, who did that originally? I'm nearly sure it's Big Pat that plays with Shebean now. I think his band originally did that. And yeah, some great songs, and it's great to see them being remembered now. I'm looking through Facebook, and there's lots of young people, going back to, and Bobby Sands obviously kept a diary of his hunger strike of his first day until I think it got to a point where he couldn't write it anymore. Yeah. Now, I've read them, but a long, long time ago. Like, in my early days of reading, I read a lot about like 10 Men Dead and a few of them books. I think I got the 10 Men Dead off you. I think you might have had it. But great books, but a harrowing read, when you're reading through it, of what they endured, And it's great to see them remembered the way they should be, so.
And they are, and as you say, I think it's another Irish thing is that, because many of the people who gave their lives for Ireland, we couldn't build a monument to everyone, but by writing a song in honour of the person who died, with their life and story behind it, is like a monument to their memory.
Yeah.
And I think it's an Irish idea that has gone on for centuries.
Yeah.
And so I was proud to make that contribution. People often ask, why don't you write a song about that hunger striker, this hunger striker? You do one, and it kind of exhausts your ideas on that one. If you go back and try and tell a story once again about another hunger strike, which is in a way very much the same story.
Similar story, yeah.
So you find it hard unless you get some kind of, real different idea that will work. But I don't think it'll work to be writing songs about every hunger strike that ever went on. Anyhow, you'd be doing 10,000.
No, but you're right, and I don't think you could ever surpass Joe McDonald anyway. I think what you've said everything you needed to say in that song, I mean, I wasn't even going to write that song, Bobby. It was just the fact that I had always imagined what it would have been like to write a song with Bobby Sands, and it was just when I had read that Crimes of Castlereagh.
Yeah, it's a final poem.
That I said, I'm going to use some words from that and put it into a song, and then I felt like I wrote with Bobby. So it was a nice thing to do, and I was very happy with it. I'm still very happy to sing the song, and I like it. So my contribution to tribute to it, even though Bobby probably has, I don't know, I think I did maybe 6 songs that were done on him.
Well, I remember, like, we were down in Cork somewhere, and this guy came up to me and he said, I have a great song for you, in a Cork accent, of course. And I said, what's it like? So he comes over to me and he sings in my ear, and he goes, hey, Bobby Sands. It was like this country and western voice, and my God, it was a terrible song altogether. But I had to compliment him on his efforts and everything else like that. But
yeah, you can't say that's shite.
You can't say. No, but I mean, you have that. You get that a lot of people, and God bless them. They're trying their best to write a song, that hopefully somebody will record and take on and bring fame to the world for them.
But in their mind, in your mind, like whoever, the mind of the writer, it's a great song in your mind, like
Yeah, well, that's it, and it's it has to be. When it gets out there to the world, it has to be accepted by the world, and if it isn't,
it's shite. But it's not easy. I think you either have to have a talent for it, or you have to work very hard at it and write a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think there's maybe 10% of the world are naturally talented at songwriting and have that, the head for it, and then there's the rest, probably 60% that can do it, but by doing it a lot, hard work, and then you've got
it doesn't come easy,
no,
because if it did, everybody would do it, and you have to work on it, and some songs come easy, and some songs come very hard.
Which part do you find the easiest, the melody or the words?
Well, when I do it both ways, really, and sometimes the melody comes into my mind and I'll take it and I'll save it somewhere, put it on the phone, save it somewhere, and then I look back at it, and normally when you look back at it, how the fuck did I think that was good? It was terrible. But, so normally what I do is I go into the piano and I start twinkling a couple of notes, and it's very important in a song to marry the words to a melody that suits it. You know what I mean? I gave you the example of the country and western guy singing Bobby Sands. Now, it just didn't gel, and it was whole thing sounded wrong. And I think marrying the song, whether if you have an idea that needs an up-tempo song, you got to do it up-tempo. If you need a song that needs a plaintive melody, you got to do a plaintive melody. And that's where the composing part comes in. Like I composed every single melody for all my songs, probably 120, 130 songs. So they're all brand new melodies. I stay away from, writing a song to the air of Sean South or any other melody that's around already. So eventually I sent out to the world 130 new melodies.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, because I wouldn't feel like I was a songwriter by copying a melody and giving it out to the world.
No, I agree with you there on that one.
Yeah.
I don't see the point in writing words to a song that has already been done. That's not writing a song. That's just changing the words.
It happened a lot in Ireland that they use the melody.
It still does.
Yeah. And it's easy. It's easy for a song to get recognised if you use an old melody for it, because everybody knows the melody anyhow. So you don't have to brainwash them with a new melody coming up. It takes years for songs to get into the brains of people, and that's the problem with writing a new melody. It's difficult to get recognised.
But it doesn't really matter, because I think, even though the songs I've written for Catalpa might not be very popular, doesn't, if we go to a gig and we play it, and then we play that gig regularly, I get asked to do it then, afterwards, so, but even not even allowing for that, it's just the fact that you got your music down, that you wrote.
I think, as time goes by, your music will get known better and better and better. Like it took a long time, even for Joe McDonald or Celtic Symphony to settle into the minds of people. Because it was being played nowhere. Yeah. The only place that you could hear it was at a Wolf Tone gig. Yeah. And then other bands hadn't taken to it because they didn't hear it or know it. So just when it gets to a certain point that a lot of people have heard it, then it begins to catch traction and get out to the world, and which it does eventually, but it could be 5 years.
But only if it's a good song.
Yeah.
So after 5 years, it's not good. It's a shite song.
Well, there you go. But that's the reality of the music, especially in our junior music.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, we're at nearly 44 minutes now, so we'll sign off unless you have something else you'd like to say on the hunger strikes.
No, I think we covered it mostly at all. And, I think everybody remembers them with the pride and the dignity that they deserve. Yeah. And it was indeed my pride and joy to have written the song Joe McDonald, because I think it changed a lot of opinions all over the world. I remember people in America coming up and saying, my God, that song is so... It had me crying. I had, during the show, and it changed my mind about Ireland, because they're hearing all English propaganda really, and on the news over there in America, and these men were terrorists and everything else. But when we played it over there in America, people changed. I remember Dan Danaher, a cop in New York, and he said to me, when I heard that song, he said, it completely changed my mind about Ireland. So that's the spirit in which it went out, and that's the spirit in which it was accepted, and that's what changed opinions. Yeah.
And Americans do have, and it's not their fault, it's because their media, when I was living over there, they're very insular in terms of, in New Jersey, they just know what happens in New Jersey.
They don't have world news.
Even what happening in New York, they couldn't, apart from it's something huge like
9/11.
Yeah, 9/11. But other than that, it's just what happens in their state,
or in their town, maybe.
Yeah. I remember being in the bar that we worked in, and you know, when you'd say you were from Ireland, they were like, "Oh my God, you must be so glad to get away from all the bombs and all that." I used to wind them up something terrible, like, you know, just like they'd ask me about like this. I think some of the people now this was back in 1989 still thought we were in Quiet Man, like, you know, that things were like that in Ireland, like, because they said, "How do you keep in contact with home?" I said, "A phone." You know, they didn't think we had phones or anything.
Carrier pigeon.
I remember I wound this this old couple, and they were like, you know, they were real nice, but they were asking some stupid questions, and they asked me how I got in contact with home, and I said, what we do is that we build a phone box, and we build 10 houses around it, and then the phone rings, the fella in the middle house comes out and answers and goes, gets the person in the house. And they believed every word of it.
Of course they do.
And they were like, after a while, your man can't call me back. He says, "But that must be terrible for the guy in the middle house. He must get a pain in his butt." And I said, no. She said, every 2 years we move on a house. And he's going, "Oh, that's good." He says, "I feel so better for the guy that was in the middle." Anyway, on that story,
Great
I think
story.
we'll head off to the hills.
Sign off, yeah.
All right. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Oh, me name is Joe McDonald. From Belfast town I came. That city I will never see again. For it's in the town of Belfast I spent many happy days. I love the town in oh so many ways. For it's there I spent my childhood and found for me a wife. I then set out to make for her a life. But all my young ambitions met with bitterness and hate. I soon found myself inside a prison gate. And you dare to call me a terrorist while you look down your gun. When I think of all the deeds that you have done. You have plundered many nations, divided many lands. You have terrorized their peoples. You rule with an iron hand, and you brought this reign of terror to my land. Through those many months interment in the Maidstone and the Maze, I thought about my land throughout those days. Why my country was divided, why I was now in jail, imprisoned without crime or without trial. And though I love my country, I am not a bitter man. I've seen cruelty and injustice at first hand. Then one fateful morning I shook for freedom's hand. For right or wrong I tried to free my land. And you dare to call me a terrorist while you look down your gun. When I think of all the deeds that you have done. You have plundered many nations, divided many lands. You have terrorized their peoples. You rule with an iron hand, and you brought this reign of terror to my land. Cold October's morning, trapped in a lion's den. I found myself imprisoned once again. Was committed to the H blocks for 14 years or more. On the blanket, the conditions, they were poor. Then a hunger strike we did commence for the dignity of man. And it seems to me that no one gave a damn. Now I am a saddened man. Watch my comrades die. If only people cared or wondered why. And you dare to call me a terrorist while you lock down your gun. When I think of all the deeds that you have done. You have plundered many nations, divided many lands. You have terrorized their peoples, you rule with an iron hand. And you brought this reign of terror to my land. May God shine on you, Bobby Sands, for the courage you have shown. May your glory and your fame be widely known. And Francis Hughes and Ray McCreish died unselfishly. And Patsy O'Hara, and next in line is me. And those who lie behind me, may your courage be the same. And I pray to God my life was not in vain. Sad and bitter was the year 1981. For everything I'd lost and nothing's won. Bobby Sands, MP, Belfast, 5th of May, age 27, 66 days. Francis Hughes, Derry, 12th of May, age 25, 59 days. Ray McCreish, Armagh, 21st of May, age 24, 61 days. Patsy O'Hara, Derry, 21st of May, age 24, 61 days. Joe MacDonald, Belfast, 8th of July, age 29, 61 days. Martin Hurson, Tyrone, 13th of July, age 25, 46 days. Kevin Lynch, Derry, 1st of August, age 25, 71 days. Kieran Doherty, Belfast, 2nd of August, age 26, 73 days. Thomas McElwee, Derry, 8th of August, age 23, 62 days. Michael Devine, Derry, 20th of August, age 27, 60 days. So that was Catalpa, my band, with my dad's song, Joe MacDonald, with the Roll of Honour at the end. So again, folks, if you liked what you heard in this episode, please do share with your friends and family, and give us a review, and we'll see you next week with this episode called The Diamond. Thanks again. Slán go fóill.